Hey everyone, welcome back to Unlearn with Bianca. If you're here for the first time, then welcome. On this podcast, we explore everything around self-healing, health, personal growth, the mind-body connection, relationships, and more. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. So today's episode is directly for those who are healing and on a recovery journey from chronic symptoms such as anxiety, long COVID, chronic pain, IBS, fatigue. You are taking a mind-body approach, so your brain retraining, you're working on the state of your nervous system, maybe doing some somatic work, and you are still dealing with and experiencing symptoms. So it's for those people who are starting to question, like, is this actually working? Am I on the right track? I've still got symptoms. When am I going to see a shift? If you're resonating, this one's for you. I'm going to be giving you a little pep talk, and this is all based on conversations I've had in the last few weeks with my clients. Same sort of themes are coming up, so I thought, why not just give you all a pep talk, because someone out there will need to hear this conversation. But before we jump into it, can we just take a moment to talk about the last episode I put out with psychic Jacqueline Mitchell? You guys lapped that one up. I had so many people message me afterwards, a lot of people really intrigued, just taking a new perspective, just interested in the conversation. And it was no surprise to me that that episode had heaps of downloads. After that conversation, I was almost left with more questions than what I went into the conversation with. There were topics that come up that I wish I had explored a little bit more in depth. There were new questions that I had, and I would love if you guys were left with some questions as well, just things lingering on your mind, to send them through to me, because when the time is right, part 2 could be on the cards, and it would be really cool to answer any questions, any lingering questions that you had from that episode too. Also, while you're here, please do a quick favor and make sure you're following this podcast. You rate this podcast, share to any family and friends. That just helps me so much, helps get these episodes out to people that need to hear them. Thank you guys so much. Okay, let's get into today's episode. A pep talk for those on the healing and recovery journey, maybe doubting the process, seeing a few changes, but really questioning, am I on the right track? I want you to use this episode to connect into where you are in this present moment currently versus where you were maybe a few months ago, a few years ago. Because I can guarantee after listening to this episode, you will realize that things are changing, things are shifting, even if physical symptoms haven't yet shifted. Because often the wins that are actually happening are more general before the body catches up. So there's lots of signs that things are shifting, but because people are so fixated on getting rid of symptoms, they're often missing all these small wins along the way. The path isn't always linear, but things are always happening. And neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to change, which changes the response into the nervous system, that's always on. So if we are taking steps to direct it in a helpful way, which is usually what we're doing when we're doing mind-body healing, then things are happening. Now, I want to start with a powerful mindset shift when it comes to recovery. When people are on a recovery journey, that makes sense, but it's not useful because the goal is not actually to get rid of symptoms completely. We do need anxiety in our life. We need it when we're in danger. We need that response. We do also need pain if we injure ourselves, if we touch a hot stove. We need these processes. We don't want to be living with them at a chronic level, and that is the difference. So rather than thinking and approaching this recovery of when are my symptoms going to go, how do I get rid of my symptoms? I want you to see this phase, recovery, healing, whatever you want to call it, as how can I support my mind and body to keep returning to this state of safety? Because when our system is in balance or the state of homeostasis, that is when the body starts healing itself. We are self-healing. The body knows how to do its thing. things can start to shift when we are in the right zone. So stop placing symptoms as the main focus and getting rid of symptoms. Lean into the trust that your body knows how to heal itself. We just have to keep getting into a safety zone and a useful zone so everything can happen on its own terms. Okay? Right, so let's get into it. So you're on track and you're further along in the recovery journey than you think, even if there's some symptoms lingering. Number one, you have stopped searching frantically for the next thing to try, the next appointment to go to, the next supplement to take, the next specialist to see, the next therapy to do. This is for those people who have been doing that cycle for years. Okay, you might be 2 years into your healing journey. You've gone and seen multiple people, you feel like you're going around in circles. Now, it's different if you're still in the phase of ruling things out and getting tests done. That's different. I'm more talking about this constant searching round in circles. You've had all the tests done. It's easy to get stuck into this loop of looking because what can happen is you go to get some tests done, there might be some abnormal markers. And this is true for anyone that has chronic pain, chronic fatigue, long COVID, anxiety. Often the markers are non-specific or they're fluctuating or they don't explain why symptoms are so severe. For example, something general like increased inflammation. So if you see like a physical marker and it's maybe slightly out of the range or they're a bit concerned about it, that is going to force you and make you think, oh, there must be something physical I need to find. I need to keep looking for that needle in a haystack physical cause. Why this is an issue when it comes to recovery, especially from a mind-body perspective, is because that constant searching, that constant trying to find the answer when nothing is found so far, it keeps the brain in a threat response and a problem-solving loop, which is the opposite of the state required for healing, which is more of a trust state and a pressure off state. So people that recover, they often get to this point where they're like, I have tried so many things. I have been around in circles. Nothing has shifted. I need to do something differently. They have stopped searching frantically, or they have taken a break from consistently searching for answers. And they begin to use tools such as brain retraining, such as simple steps to regulate the nervous system and getting support in that area. They focus on the tools they have rather than constantly reaching outside for new opinions. If you've got to this point where you've stopped frantically searching for answers and going around in circles, and you're taking a breather, that is a sign, I would say, that you are on the right track. Now, it's not uncommon for people who are recovering from chronic symptoms to notice symptoms in other areas of their body. For example, for me, I had pelvic pain, but then it started morphing into more fibromyalgia pain. Then I would have fainting episodes. This is called the symptom imperative. And this is why people often get stuck in this perpetual cycle of looking for answers. Because this thing called the symptom imperative, it describes how symptoms shift or they morph or they relocate when the underlying nervous system threat isn't actually addressed. So you think that, oh, I'm trying to heal my fatigue and now I've got these digestive issues and now I've got headaches and now I have to go to that specialist to sort that out and that's a different issue and I need to sort that out. And you get into this big spiral when in actual fact, for the most part, a lot of these symptoms are interconnected based on the state of the nervous system. So when we understand that, and when you actually understand that the nervous system is the underlying thing that actually can produce a lot of different symptoms, that can also take the pressure off to think that you need to go to a whole lot of different people for different issues. That's another thing that people that recover start to understand. The more people you see, the more boxes you open, the more stressful it becomes, and then you're in this logical problem-solving loop that does not help the stress response. Now, I want to make it really clear as I end this point. You can get support. You can try different things. It's about the energy in which you do it. People that recover, they seek support from people that actually believe in them They understand that the nervous system state is driving a lot of different symptoms, and they do it one step at a time. They're not frantic. They're not going around in circles. They are not looking for a needle in the haystack physical cause. That's the difference. Number 2, I know you are further along on the recovery journey if you're responding differently. You're responding to symptoms differently, and you're responding to life differently. So we'll start with symptoms. I want you to remember this quote: when you change your response to your symptoms will change. I will say it again. When you change your response to your symptoms will change. I have seen so many people recover from chronic symptoms that are quote unquote unrecoverable. And I would say this is one of the most simple and important concepts to get across. When we change the way we relate to our symptoms, that is when they start to shift. It is as simple as that. Regardless of what mind-body approach you're using, this concept stays the same. It's just about responding differently. So responding differently, I'll give you an example. When I had chronic pain and I was in the depths of chronic pain, dealing with it daily, if I woke up and had a sensation, had pain, I would freak out. My body would be tense. I'd be on edge. I'd be thinking, how long is this going to last? What have I got to get through today? I'd be doing an investigation internally. Are these symptoms worse than yesterday? Are they better? Have they shifted? How bad is it? I would be feeding, especially with my thoughts, that cycle, and really the pain would draw me in. I would be thinking about it. I would be analyzing it. I would be freaking out. I would be in a fear response. What happens when that cycle happens over time? And that's a natural cycle to happen, because when you're not having a pleasant experience, of course, you start freaking out about it. But when that happens over time, over a period of weeks, months, years, the brain learns that really well. That pathway becomes really strong, and that can lead to a sensitized brain and a sensitized nervous system. That is what a lot of people with chronic symptoms are dealing with, sensitized nervous system. So it's like, I heard this really great analogy, it's like a car alarm going off when a little baby leaf falls on it. Something so light that just brushes past it, the car alarm will start going off. It's exactly the same with our nervous system. There's no real danger. There might be a little sensation of pain, but the system has learned to interpret everything as a threat. It's the same with anxiety. So small sensations, small emotions, they get amplified really quickly. The volume gets turned up. People who recover from chronic symptoms, they have learned that they don't need to mentally feed and go into fear around every symptom. Even if the symptom's still there, they learn how important it is to respond to that symptom differently, because that is what breaks the feedback loop. There is a massive difference between listening to your body generally in a healthy way versus feeding symptoms and getting into fear loops around symptoms. Getting locked into symptoms, over analyzing symptoms, freaking out about them, trying to fix them, that doesn't make them go away. I know it sounds very counterproductive, counterintuitive. So how do I know as a practitioner if you're further along than you think? You've just started responding differently to symptoms that are still there. You're not forcing them away. They still might be there, but you're just responding to them differently. So when I work with my clients with the lightning process, we have a process or a practical thing that you can do to create a pause, to create some space before you react and respond. There's a whole lot of different ways people can do this, but it's simply by knowing there is a choice in how I respond to my symptom. That choice then dictates what state our nervous system stays in. So you are way further along on your recovery if you're starting to notice when you have a sensation that you are not going to feed into it, that you're not going to get into fear as much, you don't get hooked into it as much. Over time, if you continue to do this, you will be turning down that hypersensitivity, that volume button, that sensitivity button between the brain and the nervous system. It gets turned down. And that's what we really want. You also know you're further along in recovery if you're responding to life differently. Because what can happen if you've been living with symptoms that have been debilitating for a period of time, life becomes really small. People that get shifts to their symptoms, they start to connect the dots along the way. They start to realize that they have had limited capacity, and perhaps based on symptoms and flares and different experiences in the past, they have kept their routines and their life quite small to manage symptoms. But when you're wanting a different result, you need to do different things. So it requires someone to start doing things that they were a bit worried to do, to start stretching the edges of the day-to-day things. So that, for example, with someone with fatigue, they might start doing some gentle exercise. For someone with anxiety, they might ring a friend and make a plan. A huge part of recovery is slowly expanding your window to do things to teach your body it's safe to keep taking steps forward, even if it's uncomfortable. I also know you'll be further along than you think if you've started to understand and bring awareness to the ways in which you're moving through the world. So many people that have chronic symptoms, they realize that they've spent a lifetime of productivity, of rushing through life, of high achieving, of people pleasing, all these patterns that can come to the surface when we are getting our health back, and all these ways of being that really can get brought up when we're moving through mind body healing. And when you start really realizing, hey, for so long I was just operating in survival energy and cortisol was high, and that felt familiar and that felt really good, and that worked for that period of time. But now I'm starting to learn and realize I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to be forcing myself to do things when I need to rest. You start noticing ways in which you no longer want to abandon yourself. So if you're even noticing, hey, I'm craving a bit more joy and fun in my life, I am going to be okay with the fact that the house isn't completely tidy all of the time. If you're starting to notice these things that feel different, then that's a sign that you are changing at a nervous system level. Something that once would have bothered you is no longer bothering you. That means that your nervous system is getting more familiar with a parasympathetic state rather than a survival energy stress response state. So it's a really positive sign. Okay, the next one, this is a massive one. People that recover, they don't always immediately notice the shifts in things that they want to shift, such as pain, fatigue, IBS, anxiety. But there are other shifts happening more generally speaking. There will be signs that you may have missed. For example, the length of symptoms. You may still be having symptoms, but the severity, the length of the symptoms may have changed. When you're moving out of survival mode and chronic stress, there's also a lot of repatterning happening in the autonomic nervous system. And there's some small things that you might just be missing. So one thing is just having more presence as you move through your day. I remember when I was on my mind-body recovery journey, just going outside, going for a walk, I would just be more present. I'd actually notice things in the distance that once I didn't notice because I wasn't so fixated on symptoms. I wasn't so fixated on how bad the symptoms were. I was just able to be more present in conversations and in life. That is a sign that you're accessing the parasympathetic state more often. Your digestion might be changing. You might have more of an appetite. Your thinking can become clearer. There could still be brain fog, but you might notice that you can have more screen time, or you might notice that it comes in waves. It could be easier to fall asleep. It could be easier to stay asleep. You might have a more restful sleep. All of these are small signs that there is repatterning happening in the nervous system, even if symptoms are still there. At the same time, don't be so surprised if other things feel like they get shaken up a bit. So if you're feeling a bit more emotional, or you're feeling like your tolerance is low, or it's just harder to be around certain people, that can also be a sign that change is happening behind the scenes. There are things that you weren't once aware of, whether it be boundaries you didn't have or ways of being that are no longer working for you. So there can be a bit of uncomfortableness when we are changing, when we're getting our health back, because it means that sometimes there's a bit of repatterning mentally and emotionally and with people in our life as well. But if you're going through that, that's just part of the journey. And it's actually a really positive thing because you are realizing where you've been abandoning yourself in the past. And when you stop doing that and you continue to make those small choices, then you put your nervous system in a better state so that those symptoms can heal. The next sign that you're further along than you think, you have realized and you understand at a fundamental level that you and your body are not broken. You have realized that your nervous system and your brain have always attempted to protect you. And when you understand that, and when you understand the science and you understand how the nervous system works, you understand how chronic symptoms work, why they may still be there, that helps you let go of the pressure. Because if you understand that you're not fundamentally broken, you stop pushing, thinking, how's this going to happen? Why is my body responding like this? You stop trying to fix everything in a rush and you start trusting the process more. You remove urgency and you start taking it one step at a time. Because safety comes in when pressure leaves. And when we have a sensitized nervous system, releasing pressure is massive. So if you can understand the science of why chronic symptoms persist from a nervous system and brain standpoint, that will help you lean into trusting that you're no different than anyone else that has recovered. It's just that everything happens on its own timeline. Neuroplasticity, meaning the brain's ability to change, it's always happening. Everyone has different nervous systems. Everyone's journey looks different. When you can release the pressure and the timelines and just remain consistent and showing up for yourself with compassion, that is when things really start to shift. And I will forever be preaching that because I see it time and time again. My clients say, I was pushing for so long, I was forcing for so long, and when I finally understood that I could let go, that's when things started to happen. And I will stand by that because that was my experience as well. Sometimes that pressure is actually what stops our body really dropping into that safety zone where things can start to heal. Again, this sounds counterintuitive, but people that get change to their health and change to their symptoms, they get into this energy of acceptance. Now, this isn't accepting that they have to live with these symptoms forever. It's acceptance of where they're currently at. Because when we get to that point of acceptance, it's like we put down our swords. We stop fighting ourselves. Sometimes that point of acceptance comes from just exhaustion of years of going around in circles. Sometimes it's like, right, I just need to show up differently. I need to relate to myself differently. But once you get to that point of acceptance, then there's more space. And that's where we start to see shifts. I really hope this is all making sense to the people that need to hear this because this is just flowing off the top of my tongue here. Finally, the last one for today, you are further along than you think. If you have changed your language, if you've noticed language that is giving you choice versus limiting you, because our language is so important. My clients know this. What we say to ourselves can really distinguish if our brain interprets something as a threat or a safety cue. So if you're saying labels such as I have anxiety, I'm going to have this IBS for life, it will never change, I can't do this, that is limiting language that does not give us any opportunity for change. You are further along than you think if you've started to change the way you relate to your symptoms in terms of your language. So I'm experiencing some anxiety at the moment, but I know this won't last. I'm in the process of change. I'm dealing with symptoms in the morning at the moment rather than I have symptoms all day. So it's just starting to notice where we generalize, where we limit ourselves with our language. And you'll know that you're actually picking up on language when you even start to notice it in other people's conversations. So you might be out with family and friends and you notice, oh, they're talking really limiting in that aspect, or they're using really generalizing labels about that person in conversation. When you start to notice that, don't underestimate how much of a shift that can have on your agency, on your ability to change, and how the brain is rewiring. A little bonus thing here, the one thing I want you to stop doing is saying, yeah, I've made some changes, but da 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 da, not in this area. Yeah, I've shifted some symptoms, but it's still da 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 da. Remember, every time we use the but, we negate anything that comes after it. So own your changes, extract what has changed, own it, sit with it, celebrate it, and remember to take those small wins along the way. Okay, guys, that is us for today. For those of you who are on a recovery journey, who are really taking steps to shift chronic symptoms, keep going one step at a time. The path is not always linear, but remember, things are happening in the background. Do not underestimate all of these small changes. Do your best not to compare yourself to anyone else, because everyone's path is very unique and you are doing amazing. If you need support in this area of recovery, if you need someone to help you identify your blind spots, if you're new to mind body tools, brain retraining, nervous system work, or you're curious about it, please get in touch. That is what I do. That is what I support my clients with. I have hundreds of clients now that I've helped really recover and make change to chronic symptoms, all back to living their best lives. Actually, there's lots of testimonials on my website, so I'll put that below so you can go and check and get inspired. I hope you all have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.